always within reach and always accessible, the human mind begins to devalue it. It doesn't matter how meaningful, attractive, or beneficial that thing is. When it's constantly present, it stops stimulating the part of our brain that appreciates rarity. On the other hand, when something becomes harder to obtain or less frequently experienced, it immediately feels more valuable. This is why people cherish rare gems, limited edition products, or once in a lifetime experiences. The same law applies to human interactions, especially in matters of attraction and relationships. When a man gives a woman constant attention, constantly texting her, calling her, checking in, or making himself available at every moment, he unknowingly removes the sense of scarcity. His presence becomes predictable. Predictability, although comforting in some situations, often kills attraction. She knows he will always be there. She knows she doesn't have to work for his attention. She knows no matter what she does, his availability will not change. What this does over time is reduce the perceived value of his presence. It's not that she stops caring, but she subconsciously begins to take him for granted because the human brain tends to overlook what is always guaranteed. Now consider the opposite. When a man steps back, when he reduces the frequency of communication, when he creates space, a shift begins to happen. The woman who once thought she could reach him at any time now notices his absence. She starts to realize that the attention and presence she had gotten used to is no longer there. The mind, when deprived of something it once had regularly, begins to assign it more value. This is scarcity at work. Suddenly, what was once ordinary becomes special. What was once expected now feels uncertain, and uncertainty creates a spark of curiosity and desire. This is not about playing games or manipulating someone's emotions. It is simply about understanding the natural dynamics of attraction. Think of it this way. If you eat your favorite meal every single day, no matter how delicious it is, eventually it will lose its appeal. But if you only have it once in a while, the taste feels more rewarding, more exciting, and more satisfying. The same concept applies to your presence. If you make yourself constantly available, she will consume your attention without deeply valuing it. If you create scarcity, each moment with you feels more important, more meaningful, and more memorable. Scarcity also awakens appreciation. When someone is deprived of something they once had, they begin to reflect on its significance. By giving her distance, you force her to evaluate what your presence actually means. She begins to notice the small things she once overlooked: your support, your energy, your conversation, your attention. Without you constantly around, those things stand out in her memory as rare and valuable. And when she realizes she can no longer take them for granted, her desire to experience them again intensifies. Human psychology is wired to chase what seems rare and retreat from what seems abundant. This is why people line up for limited releases, why they bid high prices for rare collectibles, and why they are drawn to individuals who carry themselves with independence and self-worth. When you give distance, you align yourself with this principle. You signal that your time and attention are not something anyone can access endlessly. You demonstrate that your presence carries weight, and with that, you naturally increase the value she places on you. What's important to understand is that scarcity works on a subconscious level. She may not openly admit that your absence makes her think more about you, but internally her mind is recalibrating. The loss of constant attention activates a kind of psychological hunger. The very same attention she once brushed off now becomes something she longs for. And this longing grows stronger the longer the scarcity continues. When you always give, when you always show up, when you never create room for her to miss you, you rob her of the chance to feel this hunger. You keep feeding her even when she is full, and over time she loses her appetite. But by pulling back, by creating space, by allowing scarcity to exist, you let her appetite rebuild. This is why so many women come back after a man creates distance. It's not just nostalgia or guilt, it's the natural response of the human brain to the principle of scarcity. Space triggers reflection. When two people are constantly in communication, when they are always around each other, when every hour of the day is filled with interaction, the mind rarely has the opportunity to process what is happening. It's like standing too close to a painting. You see the brushstrokes, the colors, the details, but you miss the bigger picture. In relationships, this closeness can blur perspective. Emotions run high, misunderstandings grow, and instead of appreciating the relationship, both individuals may feel overwhelmed. That is why space becomes so powerful. By stepping back and allowing distance, you give her the room to breathe, to think, and to evaluate her feelings in a way she cannot do when you are constantly present. When you are always around, she never has to ask herself what you mean to her. She never has to evaluate the role you play in her life, because the answer is right there in front of her every single moment. Your constant availability fills the silence, leaving no gaps for her to question, to miss, or to reconsider. But when you create space, those gaps appear. She begins to sit with her own thoughts, her own emotions, and her own realizations. It is in silence, not in constant noise, that reflection takes place. She begins to replay conversations in her mind. She recalls your presence, your gestures, your words, and the way you made her feel. Some of these things she may have ignored before, but in distance they come to the surface. Reflection also brings clarity. During heated moments or periods of routine, emotions often distort perception. She might think you are too much, too available, or even suffocating. But with space, those emotions calm down, and she starts to see things differently. The irritation fades, the noise quiets, and what remains is a clearer understanding of the connection. She may realize that what she thought was overwhelming was actually care, and what she thought was ordinary was actually valuable. Without space, that clarity never arrives. Another aspect of reflection is comparison. When you are not around, she unconsciously compares how her life feels with you versus without you. Does she feel more fulfilled? Does she feel emptier? Does she miss the laughter, the support, the small moments of reassurance you provided? Human beings often cannot measure the value of something until it is taken away. By giving her space, you allow her to experience that contrast. This contrast is not always immediate, but over time, the absence creates a noticeable difference in her emotional state. She might find herself thinking of you during quiet moments, wondering how you are, missing the way you used to make her feel. That is reflection born out of space. Space also gives her time to evaluate her own behavior. In the middle of a relationship, people rarely stop to consider how their actions affect the other person. But when you withdraw, when you stop chasing, when you stop filling the silence, she is left to sit with the reality of her own choices. Did she take you for granted? Did she dismiss your effort? Did she undervalue your consistency? These questions only arise when the person she once leaned on is no longer there to provide constant reassurance. Space forces her to hold a mirror up to herself, and in that mirror she may see things she overlooked before. Beyond personal reflection, space also reignites curiosity. When you are always available, she knows everything, what you're doing, where you are, and how you feel. There is no mystery, no reason to think deeply about you, But when you step back, when she doesn't hear from you as often, when you no longer provide constant updates, she begins to wonder. Reflection takes the form of questions. What is he doing now? Has he moved on? Is he still thinking about me? That curiosity keeps her mentally engaged with you even in your absence. Without space, those questions never surface. There is also a healing element to reflection created by space. If there were arguments, disappointments, or tensions, those moments often cloud judgment. But distance allows the emotional intensity to settle. When she reflects after some time apart, she doesn't only remember the conflict, she remembers the positives that existed alongside it. The good memories resurface, and in that space, she is able to balance the scales more fairly. She sees not only the flaws, but also the strengths of the connection. When you are constantly present, she does not have the chance to miss you. Reflection and missing someone are closely connected. To miss someone is to think about them, to reflect on their role in your life. That process is impossible if you never leave. By giving her space, you allow the natural process of missing to develop. She begins to realize what your absence feels like, and in that feeling, she reflects on what you actually meant to her. Emotional reset is one of the most overlooked yet powerful outcomes of giving someone distance. When emotions are heightened, when there has been conflict, pressure, or even just too much closeness, the natural tendency is for tension to build up. This tension does not always show up as anger or arguments. Sometimes it appears as irritation, boredom, or indifference. When both people are constantly in each other's space, these emotions don't get a chance to cool down, and instead they keep building until one person feels overwhelmed. That is where distance becomes essential. It allows the emotional energy between two people to reset, almost like restarting a system that has been overloaded. Think about how the human mind works during stressful or emotional moments. When someone is upset, they are not always logical. Their perception becomes clouded by whatever they are feeling in that moment. If you continue to push during that state, sending more messages, demanding explanations, seeking closeness, they are not in the right state of mind to appreciate or understand you. All they feel is the weight of pressure, but when you take a step back and give space, those heightened emotions begin to fade. Anger softens, irritation reduces, and the feeling of suffocation gives way to relief. Only after this relief can real clarity and connection return. An emotional reset is like pressing pause. It stops the cycle of negativity and allows the mind to calm down. In that calmness, she is able to reevaluate. She no longer associates you with the intensity of conflict or pressure. Instead, she begins to remember the positive aspects of the relationship. Without the reset, her emotions stay stuck in a loop, replaying only the frustrations. With distance, the loop breaks and a new perspective has room to form. This reset is not only for her, but also for you. Distance does not just allow her to regulate her emotions, it gives you the same chance. When you are too invested, too focused, or too reactive, your own emotions can lead you to make mistakes over texting, over-explaining, trying too hard to fix things immediately. These actions usually push the other person further away. By stepping back, you give yourself the ability to regain balance. You remind yourself that your worth is not determined by immediate validation. You create space for your own feelings to settle, which makes you stronger and more composed when interaction does happen again. Another element of emotional reset is how it reignites attraction. Constant closeness, especially after disagreements, can create emotional fatigue. She begins to associate your presence with stress or arguments. That connection damages attraction because nobody wants to feel negative emotions attached to a person they are supposed to be drawn to. By taking distance, you change this association. The absence of conflict during the space allows her mind to detach the negative emotions from your identity. When she thinks of you again, she is more likely to recall the good moments rather than the fights. This shift happens naturally because emotions lose intensity with time. Distance also gives space for longing to emerge. In the heat of the moment, she may feel she doesn't want to hear from you, that she needs to push you away, or that she has lost interest. But those feelings are temporary. With time apart, as the emotions reset, the more stable and deeper feelings begin to rise again. She may start to remember the comfort, the safety, or the happiness you provided. She may realize that her desire to push you away was simply a reaction to feeling overwhelmed. This realization can only happen after emotions settle, and that settling requires distance. The reset also helps break patterns of dependency. If one person always reacts emotionally and the other always chases to fix things, the cycle becomes toxic. She reacts, you chase, and the same story repeats. Distance disrupts this rhythm. By refusing to continue the pattern, you force both yourself and her to experience something different. In that break, she notices your absence, and you notice your own strength in not overreacting. Both sides reset their roles, creating the possibility for a healthier dynamic moving forward. When emotions are left unchecked, they can distort perception. She might see you as someone who pressures her, or as someone who is too available. But when those emotions subside through distance, her perception shifts. She may begin to see you as calm, composed, and self-respecting. That shift changes the emotional weight of how she views you, which is essential in rebuilding attraction. The power of mystery is one of the most underestimated dynamics in attraction. Human beings are naturally curious creatures, and our minds are wired to pay more attention to the unknown than the known. When everything is predictable, when every detail is revealed, when every thought is shared without filter, the sense of curiosity disappears. Curiosity is what keeps someone engaged, wondering, and interested. In relationships, mystery functions as a spark. It keeps the other person thinking about you when you are not around, replaying interactions, and filling in the blanks with their imagination. When you give distance, you unintentionally activate this sense of mystery. Suddenly, she no longer knows everything about what you are doing, how you are feeling, or what your plans are, and that uncertainty pulls her focus back toward you. When you are constantly available and open, she doesn't need to think about you outside of the moments you are physically present. She knows your routine, your schedule, and your reactions. There are no unanswered questions left in her mind. While this may sound like security, in terms of attraction, it leads to emotional flatness. Nothing new is discovered, nothing surprising is revealed, and her brain has no reason to invest additional energy into thinking about you. Mystery changes this. When she cannot predict your actions, when she cannot fully read your mind, her brain stays engaged, trying to solve the puzzle. And the more her mind works on you, the stronger the connection grows, because attention and attraction are closely linked. Mystery also reintroduces an element of challenge. People value what they feel they must earn. If she feels like she knows everything about you and has unlimited access to you, she feels no challenge. But when you create distance, when you do not reveal all of your thoughts, when you let silence exist instead of filling it with constant reassurance, she feels the challenge of not knowing. That challenge motivates her to move closer, to ask questions, to re-engage. By not being fully transparent at all times, you allow her to feel the desire to pursue clarity. This is not about manipulation or pretending to be someone you're not. It is about holding back just enough of yourself to allow discovery to happen over time. If you think about the beginning of any attraction, part of the excitement comes from not fully knowing the other person. Each interaction feels new, each revelation feels special, and the unknown creates anticipation. But as time goes on, many people kill this natural dynamic by overexposing themselves, sharing every thought instantly, and making their lives an open book. In doing so, they remove the very element that created attraction in the first place. Maintaining a degree of mystery sustains that original energy. Another aspect of mystery is how it connects to self-respect. When you are not rushing to explain yourself, when you are not desperate to reveal everything about your emotions, you send a subtle but powerful message. You are confident enough to let her wonder. This signals that you are not dependent on her understanding every detail of your life to validate you. That quiet confidence is magnetic. It stands out because so many people in relationships give away too much, too soon, seeking validation through oversharing. By resisting that urge, you project strength and independence, which naturally heightens attraction. Mystery also encourages imagination, and imagination is often stronger than reality. When she doesn't know exactly what you are doing or thinking, her mind fills in the blanks. Often, the version she imagines is even more powerful, intriguing, or attractive than the reality. This is why distance and silence can be so effective in drawing her back. Instead of you forcing her to focus on you, her own thoughts guide her there. She builds scenarios in her mind, wonders about your actions, and begins to feel curiosity turning into longing. Even in established relationships, mystery prevents things from becoming stale. Too much predictability can turn even the strongest attraction into routine. When you create moments of uncertainty, whether by stepping back, pursuing your own goals, or simply not explaining every single detail, you keep the energy alive. She continues to feel that there is more to learn, more to uncover, and more to understand about you. This keeps her invested on a deeper level. Mystery is also tied to scarcity. When she doesn't know when you will call, when she doesn't know what you are doing with your time, when she doesn't know exactly how you feel about her at every moment, she cannot take your presence for granted. The lack of information makes her value your attention even more when she does receive it. Each message feels more significant, each conversation feels more important, and each interaction feels like an event rather than a routine. Natural attraction cycle is deeply rooted in human psychology and biology. Attraction is not static, it ebbs and flows like a tide. People often misunderstand this dynamic, thinking that once someone is drawn to them, the feeling should remain constant if they just give enough attention, reassurance, or effort. But the truth is, attraction works in cycles, and part of maintaining it requires allowing space for those natural rhythms to unfold. When you give distance, you are not breaking attraction. You are often allowing the natural cycle of attraction to reset and strengthen. In the early stages of any relationship, attraction tends to be intense. The novelty of getting to know someone, the mystery, and the excitement of new interactions create a surge of emotions. During this stage, both people often crave constant contact, but over time, as familiarity grows, that intensity naturally cools down. This does not mean the attraction is gone. It simply shifts into another phase of the cycle. Without space, without allowing the rhythm to play out, the relationship can stagnate. That is why distance plays such a crucial role. It gives room for desire to rebuild after the initial intensity has faded. Think of it like breathing. You cannot inhale without eventually exhaling. The cycle requires both parts. Similarly, attraction requires both closeness and space. If you try to hold on too tightly, if you attempt to force closeness all the time, the natural rhythm is interrupted. She feels smothered, and instead of attraction growing, it diminishes. But when you step back, when you allow her to feel the absence, the cycle continues. After exhaling, the body naturally wants to inhale again. After space, the desire to reconnect naturally reemerges. Another layer of the attraction cycle is how it interacts with human tendency to desire what is scarce. When someone feels like they can access you at any moment, they unconsciously place you lower on the scale of priority. But when there is a pause in contact, when your attention is no longer guaranteed, the mind reacts by increasing its focus on you. This is not just emotional, it is neurological. The brain releases more dopamine when pursuing uncertain rewards than when receiving guaranteed ones. That uncertainty, created by space, is what drives the natural cycle forward. She begins to feel the pull again, not because you chased her, but because her brain is wired to chase what it cannot immediately have. The natural attraction cycle also involves contrast. To appreciate warmth, one must first feel cold. To value connection, one must experience absence. Constant presence removes this contrast, making even the best qualities feel ordinary. Distance restores contrast. When you are not around, the memories of your presence become sharper. She notices the void you leave, and in that void, her attraction has room to regrow. Without that contrast, even the strongest attraction dulls into routine. It is important to understand that this cycle is not about punishment or withdrawal as a tactic. It is about aligning with how human emotions naturally operate. Just as seasons change, just as tides rise and fall, attraction thrives when there is a rhythm of closeness and distance. By respecting this cycle, you ensure that attraction does not burn out prematurely. Many relationships fail because one or both people expect constant intensity, not realizing that intensity cannot exist without intervals of calm. Distance also enhances anticipation, which is a vital part of the cycle. When you are not always available, she begins to look forward to the next time she hears from you or sees you. That anticipation is a powerful builder of attraction. It is the same reason why waiting for something often feels as rewarding as experiencing it. The build-up fuels the excitement, and when the connection finally happens again, it feels richer and more satisfying. If there is no anticipation, if everything is immediate and predictable, attraction loses its spark. This cycle also reinforces respect. When you allow distance, you demonstrate that you are not afraid of space, that you trust the process of attraction instead of trying to control it. That level of confidence signals strength. Most people panic when attraction dips temporarily, and they overcompensate with chasing, reassurance, and constant effort. Ironically, that only accelerates the decline. By understanding and respecting the natural cycle, you do the opposite. You allow her feelings to return on their own, which makes them far stronger than anything you could have forced. Respect is earned, not demanded, and this principle becomes even clearer when you give distance in a relationship. Many people make the mistake of thinking that respect can be forced through words, by setting ultimatums, or by asking for it repeatedly. But true respect never comes that way. It comes from actions, from behavior, and from the energy you carry when you interact with someone. When you give her space instead of chasing or begging for attention, you communicate something very powerful without saying a single word. You show that you respect yourself. And when you respect yourself, others are far more likely to respect you in return. When you do the opposite, when you beg, when you plead, when you constantly ask for validation, you are essentially placing yourself in a position of weakness. You are signaling that your value depends on how the other person treats you in that moment. This energy not only weakens your own self-image, but it also erodes the respect she feels for you. Respect is connected to strength, stability, and self-control. When you demonstrate that you cannot control your emotions or that you cannot handle distance, it sends the message that you lack those qualities. By contrast, when you step back calmly, when you allow her to have space without reacting negatively, you show strength. That strength is what earns respect. Respect also grows when you set boundaries. Giving someone distance is not about withdrawing out of fear. It is about understanding that your time and presence are valuable. When you communicate through your actions that you will not tolerate being taken for granted, that you will not constantly chase after someone who pulls away, you are setting a boundary. And healthy boundaries are at the core of respect. She sees that you are not willing to sacrifice your dignity for temporary closeness. She sees that you value yourself enough to walk away if necessary. This makes her recognize your worth in a way that words alone never could. Another way distance earns respect is by breaking patterns of dependency. If she knows you will always respond instantly, always be there no matter how she behaves, she learns that she does not have to respect your time or effort. But when you shift the dynamic by not being constantly available, you reset the pattern. She begins to notice that your energy is not guaranteed, and this forces her to evaluate how she treats you. People tend to respect what they know they can lose, and distance highlights that possibility without any threats or confrontations. Respect is also connected to how you handle your emotions. If you lash out when she pulls back, if you become needy or controlling, you lose respect because it shows that you cannot manage yourself. But if you respond with composure, if you remain calm and focused on your own growth and priorities, she sees emotional maturity. Emotional maturity is rare, and because it is rare, it is respected. By creating space and not overreacting, you prove that you are not controlled by temporary emotions, and this elevates you in her eyes. Self-respect is the foundation of being respected by others. When you use distance wisely, you are not just teaching her to respect you. You are reinforcing your own sense of worth. You remind yourself that your value does not come from constant validation or attention. You remind yourself that you are whole even without someone else's approval. This mindset radiates outward, and people naturally respond to it. When someone respects themselves, they naturally command respect from others, because respect is something we give to those who carry themselves with dignity. Another layer to this is how respect ties into attraction. Attraction without respect quickly fades because nobody wants to be drawn to someone they cannot admire. By giving space and showing restraint, you present yourself as someone who is not controlled by impulses. You show that you have patience, that you trust yourself, and that you are capable of walking away rather than clinging desperately. This strength of character is what transforms attraction into something deeper. It is what makes her see you not just as someone she wants in the moment, but as someone she can admire long term. Respect is not created overnight. It builds slowly through consistent actions that show you are serious about your values. Each time you choose space instead of chasing, each time you remain calm instead of overreacting, each time you prioritize your dignity over desperation, you are adding another layer to the respect she feels for you. Over time, this consistent behavior reshapes how she views you. Even if she once took you for granted, she begins to see you differently, not as someone who bends under pressure, but as someone who stands tall even in silence. When you give her distance, you are not just pulling away, you are shifting the balance of the entire dynamic. Scarcity reminds her of your value, space forces her to reflect, distance resets her emotions, mystery reignites her curiosity, the natural cycle of attraction restores itself, and your self-respect earns her respect in return. Together, these forces work in silence, without arguments, without demands, and without you needing to prove anything. It is not about playing games. It is about understanding human psychology and trusting the power of restraint. Real strength is not in chasing, but in stepping back with confidence. And when you do, she comes back not because you forced her to, but because she realizes on her own that losing you is far more costly than keeping her distance.